Imagine this: a lone alien scout ship cautiously approaching what appears to be just another human war vessel. But as their scanners penetrate the ship's surface, what they discover would shake their entire civilization to its core. This is a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about humanity's place in the universe. What happened next will leave you breathless. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our mind-bending sci-fi stories. Let us know in the comments below what you think makes humans truly unique in the galaxy. The alien vessel drifted silently through the endless darkness, its sensors reaching out like invisible fingers. The crew of the Vexian scout ship had been monitoring these peculiar humans for decades, watching their chaotic wars and reckless expansion across the stars. "Captain," one of the bridge officers stammered, his voice trembling with alarm. "You need to see this." High Captain Zarn stepped forward, his yellow eyes narrowing as he examined the readings. What he saw sent an icy chill down his spine. The human ship, designated Invincible, defied every known principle of warfare. Its hull wasn't ordinary metal, but a complex composite designed to absorb and dissipate energy attacks. The armor was absurdly thick, built to withstand unimaginable sieges. Zarn's throat tightened as he scanned through the weapons analysis. Rail guns capable of firing projectiles at relativistic speeds. Plasma lances that could slice through the strongest warship hulls in seconds. Thousands of missiles, each equipped with warheads that warped space itself. But worst of all were the secondary systems. Boarding drones with monomolecular blades, nanite swarms designed to dissolve flesh and metal alike, and something called exotroopers, cybernetic warriors engineered from fallen soldiers. "This isn't a warship," whispered the Vexian officer, his skin pale with terror. "It's a nightmare given form." Zarn couldn't look away. The humans had always fought like cornered beasts, using whatever means necessary to survive. Now they had built a war machine that reflected their monstrous nature in full. A sickening realization hit him. The Galactic Confederation had debated whether to assimilate humanity or eradicate them before they became a problem. Many had dismissed them as unworthy of attention. That was a mistake. The humans had been preparing for war, and now they were ready. "Cut the scanners," Zarn commanded, his voice barely above a whisper. "Power down all weapons. Send a message to the home world." When asked what to say, he exhaled shakily. "Tell them we must never provoke the humans." Silence fell over the bridge as the Invincible hung in the void, utterly still. It was waiting, watching. The crew obeyed without question, shutting down their weapons and ceasing all scans. But it was too late. The human warship had noticed them. A ripple of energy shimmered across its hull. Before Zarn could react, a transmission cut through their comms. The voice was cold, mechanical, yet unmistakably human. "Unidentified vessel, you have been scanning a Terran warship. State your purpose immediately." The bridge crew tensed. Vexian ships were equipped with stealth fields designed to mask their presence. No species had ever detected them before, but the humans had, and they weren't pleased. Zarn's mind raced. If they responded incorrectly, this thing, would obliterate them in an instant. He had no doubt about that now. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to remain calm. "Open a channel," he instructed, "and show no hostility." When the channel opened, Zarn spoke carefully. "This is High Captain Zarn of the Vexian Exploration Fleet. We mean no harm. We were merely observing." A long pause followed. Then the human voice returned, dripping with mockery. "Observing, huh? Thought your fancy cloaking tech made you invisible." Zarn felt a pit form in his stomach. They had seen right through them. "That was not our intention." He lied smoothly. "We have been monitoring many civilizations across the sector. Yours is simply of interest to us." Another silence. Then something changed on their sensors. The Invincible was powering up. Its engines flared with unnatural intensity. Weapon systems cycled through readiness checks. Targeting systems locked onto their vessel. Not one, but dozens. The Vexian ship was suddenly bathed in overlapping firing solutions, each predicting their every possible movement. If the humans decided to fire, Zarn realized with growing dread, There would be no escape. Then the voice returned. I suggest you pick another civilization to spy on. It was a warning. Beneath it lay an unspoken threat. Zarn clenched his jaw. He had underestimated the humans. The entire Galactic Confederation had. These creatures weren't just another fledgling race climbing the ladder of progress. They were already at the top, and they were letting him go. Understood. Zarn said carefully, we will depart immediately. After what felt like an eternity, the human's voice softened slightly. Good choice. Now run along, little scout. And next time remember who owns the sector. As soon as the transmission cut, Zarn wasted no time. Get us out of here now. The Vexian ship spun away, activating its jump drive and vanishing into the void. As the stars streaked past them, Zarn allowed himself a slow, shuddering breath. Humanity wasn't just dangerous. They were something else entirely, and the galaxy would never be the same. When the Vexian scout ship emerged from the jump light years away, High Captain Zarn expected to feel relief, but the sensation never came. Instead, a sickening weight settled in his chest. His claws drummed against the armrest of his command chair as he turned to his communications officer. Send an encrypted transmission to High Command. They must hear this immediately. The officer hesitated. Captain, what do we tell them? Zarn exhaled slowly. The truth. The humans are not what we thought they were. Minutes stretched into hours before the reply from High Command arrived. When it did, Zarn almost wished it hadn't. The message was direct. You are ordered to report to the War Council immediately. Cease all further missions. The humans must be reevaluated. Zarn felt his blood turn cold. The War Council only convened for existential threats. The last time they had gathered in full force was during the rise of the UAR hive, a parasitic species that had consumed entire star systems before being purged from the galaxy, and now humanity was being placed in the same category. Prepare for another jump, Zarn commanded. We return home at once. As the ship powered up, he allowed himself one final glance at the void beyond the viewport. For centuries, the Vexians had believed themselves masters of strategy, warriors of supreme intelligence. But for the first time in his life, Zarn felt like prey, and he knew with absolute certainty that humanity had become the apex predator of the galaxy. The worst part? They hadn't even begun to show their true strength yet. The Vexian capital world, Zaltareth, gleamed beneath twin suns as High Captain Zarn's scout ship descended toward the military command complex. Towering spires of obsidian and steel loomed over the landing bay, their surfaces adorned with the banners of the War Council, symbols of order, strategy, and absolute power. Normally, such an audience would be granted only to the highest-ranking warlords of the Vexian Dominion. The fact that he, a mere scout commander, had been summoned meant only one thing: fear. The War Council chamber was unlike anything Zarn had experienced before. 13 warlords, each representing different branches of the Dominion's military-industrial complex, sat in elevated positions around a central holographic display. At the center presided Grand Warlord Torvas, his battle-scarred face speaking of centuries spent waging wars across the stars. You have seen something, Torvas growled, his golden eyes locking onto Zarn. Something that has shaken even you. Zarn stepped forward, his claws clenched behind his back to steady himself. I have, Grand Warlord, and I bring grave news. Activating a hollow projector, he displayed the terrifying scans of the Invincible. As the data scrolled across the Council's vision, a ripple of unease spread through the chamber. This is a human warship, Zarn explained. A single vessel, yet it possesses armor that absorbs energy attacks, kinetic weaponry capable of bypassing standard shielding, and boarding technology that eliminates enemy crews before a ship is even destroyed. A murmur of disbelief ran through the Council. Warlord Veer, known for his brutal campaigns against lesser species, scoffed. Absurd! Humanity is young. Their technology is crude. Even if they have improved, they lack the strategy to pose a true threat. Zarn turned his gaze toward Veer. Then tell me, Warlord, how did they detect us through our stealth fields? How did they lock weapons on our vessel before we even realized they were watching? Veer faltered. Zarn continued. They did not fire upon us. They allowed us to leave. And do you know what that tells me? Tor Vass's expression darkened. That they are not simply warlike savages. Zarn nodded. Yes, the humans are not just strong. They are confident. They knew they could destroy us, yet chose not to. That restraint is what makes them terrifying, because it means they are waiting for something, preparing for something. A long silence stretched across the chamber. Then, for the first time in Vexian history, a war council session ended without an immediate resolution. There were no orders to mobilize fleets, no call for war, because for the first time, the Dominion had encountered an enemy it didn't know how to defeat. And worse still, the humans already knew, deep within human-controlled space, aboard the warship Invincible. Captain Elias Grant stood in his command chamber, watching the sensor logs from their recent encounter with the Vexian scout ship. His officers had been uneasy, wondering why they had let the alien vessel go. Grant knew why. He folded his arms as he studied the data, his eyes narrowing on the final energy scan of the Vexian ship before its retreat. They're starting to ask questions, his first officer murmured. Grant nodded. Let them. The officer hesitated. Do you think they suspect? Grant let out a slow breath, glancing at the sealed classified reports on his screen, the ones detailing the real threat, hidden from the rest of the galaxy for centuries. He looked back at the viewport, staring into the endless void. They'll find out soon enough. Meanwhile, aboard the Vexian dreadnought Sovereign Wrath, Zarn sat alone in his personal chamber, staring at encrypted data feeds scrolling before him. The War Council had given him full access to all intelligence reports on humanity. What he saw unsettled him more than anything in his long military career. The humans were hiding something. Over the past 50 years, their technological progress had accelerated at an unnatural rate. They had gone from crude planetary defenses to warships capable of outmaneuvering the best the Galactic Confederation had to offer. Their ships were designed for endurance, their weapons refined for maximum lethality. But none of that was what disturbed him most. No, the real anomaly was the lack of outward expansion. Every major spacefaring race followed the same pattern. Expand, claim new territory, secure resources, and then push outward again. It was the nature of all species that sought dominance over stars. But the humans, they weren't expanding. Their fleet numbers were increasing at an alarming rate. Yet their borders remained almost unchanged. They fortified their colonies, built orbital defenses, created fleet yards capable of turning out warships at a pace that defied known logistics. But they did not invade. They did not conquer. They're waiting, Zarn realized, tapping his claws against console. If the humans were preparing for war, it should be against the Vexians or one of the other dominant species of the Galactic Confederation. But if they had no interest in attacking their neighbors, then who? His console pinged. A classified transmission from the Vexian Intelligence Network. Zarn frowned and opened a file. A moment later, his blood ran cold. It was a deep space scan taken in a sector far beyond human-controlled space, a region that had been marked as uninhabited for millennia, but it was no longer empty. The images showed wreckage, not human, not Vexian, not of any known species. Gigantic whole fragments, the remains of ships larger than anything recorded in history. Their design was completely alien, angular, twisted, with strange patterns of damage that suggested their destruction was not from conventional weaponry. Something had torn these ships apart. And that was not the most disturbing part. Among the wreckage, faint energy signatures flickered, active signals, weak but unmistakable. Whatever had destroyed those ships was still out there, and the humans already knew. Zarn clenched his fists. The Invincible wasn't built for war against the Galactic Confederation. It was built to fight them, and for the first time, he understood why the humans had let him go. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't intimidation. It was a warning. The question now was, had the warning come too late? Deep inside human space, aboard the warship Invincible, Captain Elias Grant stood in the dim glow of the bridge, watching the tactical display. His officers moved efficiently around him, monitoring ship diagnostics and sensor feeds. But his attention remained locked on one particular anomaly. A lone Vexian vessel had entered human space. No escort, no weapons primed, no signs of aggression. Brave. His first officer muttered, arms crossed. Or desperate, Grant smirked. Maybe both. He leaned forward, opened a channel. A moment later, the view screen flickered to life, and Zarn's hardened visage appeared. His reptilian features were tense, his yellow eyes flickering with something Grant rarely saw in Vexians. Uncertainty. Captain Grant, Zarn began, his voice measured. We need to talk. Grant tilted his head. Do we? Zarn didn't flinch. I have seen the wreckage. I know what you're building your ships for. I know there is something out there. His claws tapped against his console. And I know you've been hiding it from the rest of the galaxy. The bridge went silent. Grant let out a slow breath, rubbing his jaw. Then he motioned for his officers to mute outgoing audio. Well, his first officer whispered, There goes a secret. Grant nodded, eyes narrowing at the screen. The Vexians were smart, but he hadn't expected them to figure out this quickly. It complicated things. The truth was, humanity hadn't just found the wreckage. They had encountered the things that caused it, and they knew that sooner or later, the war that had destroyed those ancient ships would come knocking at their door. Humanity's rapid militarization, their reluctance to expand, the relentless production of warships like the Invincible. It was all preparation. They weren't interested in galactic conquest. They weren't trying to dominate the known species. They were trying to survive. Grant unmuted the channel and met Zarn's gaze. You want answers? He said. Fine. But once I tell you the truth, there's no going back. Zarn's expression didn't waver. I understand. Grant exhaled. All right, then. Let me tell you about the things in the dark. Grant stood in the dim glow of his command chamber, staring at the encrypted files on his terminal. The classified reports contained data that no species outside of humanity had ever seen until now. Zarn sat across from him, his reptilian features impassive. But Grant could see the tension in his posture. The Vexian had spent his life believing his people were the apex predators of the galaxy. That illusion was about to be shattered. Grant leaned forward, fingers interlocked. We first picked up strange signals near the edges of explored space about 80 years ago. At first, we thought they were just stellar anomalies, background noise, but then ships started disappearing. Zarn's eyes narrowed. Pirates. Grant shook his head. That's what we thought, until we found the wrecks. He tapped the console, and the hollow projector flickered to life. Distorted images appeared. Twisted metal, shattered hulls, enormous scars along the remains of ships that had been torn apart by something. Some of the damage looked like energy weapon fire, but much of it didn't. Some ships had been peeled open like fruit. Others had been ripped apart on a molecular level. Zarn's spine flattened. This was not war. This was extermination. Grant nodded. We sent scout teams to investigate. The first few never came back. His expression darkened. The ones that did weren't the same. The images shifted again, showing something worse. Footage from the helmets of exploration teams. The camera feeds were shaky, flickering, but the sounds were unmistakable. Screams, gunfire, and then, just before the feed cut, an inhuman shriek that sent ice crawling up Zarn's spine. What did you find? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Grant exhaled. At first, we thought it was an old war, some long-dead civilization that wiped itself out. But then, he hesitated. They woke up. The footage changed again, showing a grainy long-distance recording. A human patrol fleet had encountered something moving through the debris field. At first, it seemed like just another derelict ship, floating lifelessly in the void, until it moved. Zarn's claws tightened as he watched. The derelict was enormous, a ship larger than any dreadnought he'd ever seen, covered in jagged, shifting plates of some organic metal hybrid. It pulsed like a living thing, and as the human ships approached, the entire structure unfolded, dozens of appendages extended. some bristling with weaponry, others ending in grotesque claw-like structures. The footage zoomed in on one of the hull breaches, and Zarn felt genuine horror as he saw them. Figures, twisted, elongated forms that used to be something else. Some bore remnants of armor, plating from unknown civilizations. Others still had tattered uniforms, trophies of species that had been assimilated. Then the attack began. The recording dissolved into chaos. The human fleet opened fire, but the entity, moved like nothing Zarn had ever seen. It adapted. Energy beams bent away from its surface. Kinetic rounds dissolved before impact. And when it struck back, the human ships didn't just explode. They withered, their hulls corroding in an instant, their crews screaming as the very air inside their vessels turned against them. The recording cut. Silence filled the room. Zarn's voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. "You survived." Grant leaned back, barely containing his emotions. He rubbed his temples. "That was the first encounter. We lost an entire fleet just trying to escape." He glanced at the Vexian. "We call them the Arbus. We don't know if that's their real name. Hell, we don't know if they even have names." Zarn exhaled shakily. "And you've been fighting them ever since." Grant nodded. "Not just fighting, preparing." His jaw tightened. "We don't know how many of them are out there. We don't know if they have a home world, or if they just exist, drifting through the void, consuming everything in their path. But we do know one thing." He locked eyes with Zarn. "They're coming." Zarn sat in stunned silence, his mind reeling from the horrors he had just witnessed. The Arbus, a name that meant nothing yet carried the weight of something ancient, something unstoppable. He had spent his life believing the Vexian Dominion was a pinnacle of galactic power, that they dictated the fate of lesser species. Now he realized how blind they had been, and how utterly unprepared. The room remained eerily quiet, save for the hum of the invincible systems. Captain Grant watched him carefully, gauging his reaction. Finally, Zarn found his voice. "You should have told the Galactic Confederation." His words were slow, deliberate. They needed to know. Grant let out a dry chuckle. "And what would they have done, Captain? Dismissed us? Called us paranoid? Told us we were fear-mongering?" He leaned forward, his blue eyes cold. "Or worse, they would have panicked." Zarn opened his mouth to argue, but Grant was right. The Galactic Confederation was bloated, slow-moving. Every major decision required centuries of deliberation, endless political maneuvering. If the humans had revealed the Arbus threat too soon, the Union would have either ignored them or thrown fleets at the unknown enemy, without understanding what they were fighting. Both outcomes would have led to disaster. Zarn exhaled sharply. "So instead, you prepared in secret." Grant nodded. "We built warships like the Invincible. We stopped expanding and started fortifying. Every new colony was another fortress. Every outpost a forward defense station." His expression darkened. "Because we don't know when the Arbus will arrive in full force, only that they will." Zarn's claws curled against the table. The Vexians prided themselves on their military superiority, but against this enemy, against an intelligence that adapted in real time, that absorbed the biology and technology of everything it consumed, they wouldn't last a month. None of them would. A chilling thought crossed his mind. Have the Arbus reached your inner worlds yet? Grant's silence was answer enough. Zarn felt his blood run cold. "How long do you have?" Grant exhaled, rubbing his temples. "If our projections are right." His voice was quiet. "Maybe a decade, maybe less." "A decade?" Zarn repeated. 10 years before the sky burned." Zarn straightened, his mind already racing. If he returned to the Dominion with this knowledge, the War Council would listen. They had to. If they didn't, they would be signing their own extinction. But that wouldn't be enough. The Dominion alone could not stop this. The Galactic Confederation had to be warned. Every species, every fleet, every soldier had to prepare. He met Grant's gaze. "You let me leave before, Captain?" That was a warning, a show of power. He inhaled deeply. "Now I'm asking you to let me leave again, but this time so I can fight." Grant studied him for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Then you better move fast, Captain, because time is running out. As the Vexian ship left human space, Zarn sat in his command chair, staring out at the void. He had come seeking intelligence. He had found a nightmare, and now the greatest war in history was about to begin. Not between empires, not between species, but between life and thing that had come to erase it. Zarn's ship tore through the void, heading straight for the heart of the Vexian Dominion. He had no time to waste. Every second spent debating, every moment of hesitation, brought the Arbus closer to the inevitable slaughter. He had to make the War Council understand, had to make them believe. But even as the stars streaked past his viewport, doubt gnawed at him. Would they listen? Would the Dominion, proud and arrogant, accept that they were no longer the apex predators of the galaxy? That the war they had spent centuries preparing for, the war against humans, was meaningless in the face of the true enemy? He clenched his jaw. It didn't matter. If they didn't believe him, he would make them believe, because the alternative was unthinkable. 1 week later, in the Vexian War Council chamber, Zarn stood before the gathered warlords, his claws pressed against the cold metal war table. The chamber was filled with tension, the air thick with skepticism. Grand Warlord Torvas sat in silence, golden eyes scanning the intelligence reports that Zarn had presented. The other warlords muttered amongst themselves, uneasy but unconvinced. Finally, Vir, the most aggressive of the council, snorted. "This is madness," he growled. "You expect us to believe that humans have been fighting a war in the dark? That some unknown force lurks beyond our borders, ready to consume the galaxy?" His spines bristled. "Humans lie. Zarn, they deceive. This is a ploy to make us afraid." Zarn's patience snapped. He slammed his fist against the war table, baring his fangs. "You think I'm afraid of humans?" His voice was a snarl. "I saw what they saw. I heard the screams. I watched as ships were torn apart like dry leaves, their crews devoured by something we don't even understand." He pointed at the hollow projection still flickering in the center of the chamber. "Look at it. Look at it. That is not a human deception. That is death itself." Silence fell. Torvas leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "And you trust the humans?" Zarn hesitated. "I trust that they want to live. And right now, that is all that matters." Torvas sat back, considering. Finally, he let out a slow breath. "You have given us much to think about, High Captain. The Council will deliberate." Zarn cut him off. "There is no time for deliberation." The chamber went still. Zarn's voice lowered. "This enemy does not negotiate. It does not scheme. It does not play political games." He met the Grand Warlord's gaze. "It consumes, and once it arrives, there will be no second chances." Torvas studied him for a long moment. Then slowly he stood. "I will summon the full might of the Dominion," he declared, his gaze sweeping across the gathered warlords. "And then we will bring this to the Galactic Confederation. If the humans speak the truth, then we all stand on the precipice of annihilation." His voice hardened. "And we will not die in silence." Zarn exhaled, tension finally leaving his body. It wasn't a victory. Not yet, but it was a start. 5 years later, high orbit of Vexian Prime. The combined armada of the Galactic Confederation hung in formation, stretching across the void. Thousands of ships from dozens of species. Vexians, humans, Zori, Telari. Each with their own rivalries, their own histories of conflict, and yet, for the first time in history, they stood together. The Invincible rested at the heart of the fleet, now one of many such warships. The humans had shared their knowledge, their technology. The Dominion had adapted their tactics. The Union had built defenses unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. But would it be enough? On the bridge of his new command ship, Zarn stood side by side with Captain Grant. Staring out at the black abyss beyond their fleet, Grant's voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the edge in his tone. "They're coming." Zarn nodded. "Then we will meet them." A long silence stretched between them. Then the stars shifted. A ripple of unnatural darkness spread across the void. And suddenly, the shadows moved. Ships, things emerged from the nothingness, twisting and pulsing, their forms both organic and mechanical. their hulls adorned with the skeletal remains of past victims. The Arbus had arrived, and the war for the galaxy had begun. Moral lesson. In the face of overwhelming odds and existential threats, unity and preparation become humanity's greatest strengths. Sometimes the true enemy isn't what divides us, but the darkness that threatens to consume us all.